All right, UFC 313 wrapped up, and we are going to do our matchmaking video. I'm going to be matchmaking most of the people on the card, the ones that I think they're interesting and relevant matchups for. It was a good card. I think there's a lot of interesting matchups that we can look at, and let's just get right into it. Magomed Ankalaev obviously defeated Alex Pereira in a close, but I thought overall he did win the fight. I think they rematch. I think that it's just too obvious to not rematch. Alex is a multiple time defending champion. It's not like you defend once or twice. He's defended the belt 3 times, was incredibly active. He's a fan favorite, and it makes more sense. It's like you can put Yuri in there, but if Yuri does beat Ankalaev, what do? Just give Pereira to Yuri again, and then Pereira takes the belt. I think we need solidification here between Ank and Alex Pereira. A lot of people calling robbery. I really don't think this was a robbery. I wanted Pereira to win too. I think he's a lot more entertaining than Ankalaev. I think he's a much more active champion. I think he's so much better for the sport as well, but Ankalaev won. And I'd like to see them fight again. It's probably going to be Abu Dhabi, realistically. Like, I can see this being the first ever co-main event for a light heavyweight in Abu Dhabi. Just being that I think Islam Makhachev is going to end up trying to fight on that Abu Dhabi card too. And I just think he's going to, as the champion, is going to sell more than Ankalaev and Pereira too will. I do. But I think it's going to be Ankalaev and Pereira too. It's going to be on Abu Dhabi, either the main event or the co-main event, depending on how healthy Makhachev is if he fights one more time before Abu Dhabi. Would love to see that guy fight more than once a fucking year. That'd be great, but same goes for Ankalaev, but I think I don't think they're going to be making the International Fight Week card. I just don't. Again, would love to see it. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think this is going to be in Abu Dhabi. Ankalaev, Pereira, 2. Yeah, it's what everyone's going to want to. Granted, I think Yuri has a better chance against Ank at this point than Pereira does, but we'll see. Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje doesn't get unlimited title fights. Listen, I love Gaethje. But if I'm going to be honest, it's like, you look at the rankings, he's not going to fight Max. An Armin fight's very interesting. But realistically, I think it's going to be the Poirier Trilogy. It's the fight I want to see Gaethje in most. They've both knocked each other out one time. They both have mutual respect for each other. They can main event in Dustin. This is the kind of opponent that Poirier wants to retire against. Someone that's going to go to war with him, that he has a chance to beat, but someone that he also has a lot of respect for. He's not going to go out there and fight Colby. He doesn't want that fight. He wants like a respectful, good retirement where it can be a good, wholesome moment with a good opponent across the cage from him. Gaethje and Poirier, I think, need to duke this thing out. Finish this trilogy. Fight night main event in Louisiana, and I believe it's going to be August. That's the fight that makes the most sense to me for Justin Gaethje. Poirier, Gaethje 3. And it's like such a strong main event that it's going to be watched by a ton. This is a great fight to make. Gaethje, Poirier. If Gaethje beats Poirier, then he has back-to-back wins over Fiziev and Poirier. Then he gets his title shot. Simple as that. So I think Gaethje, Poirier is what makes sense. He shouldn't be fighting Islam Makhachev. He doesn't deserve it after just beating Rafael Fiziev. So we're going to move on. Rafael Fiziev, he did the UFC a huge favor by stepping in and taking this fight. And it's been very hard to book Fiziev because a lot of people apparently have been saying no, like Gamrot. So I think the next fight for Rafael Fiziev is you do him a little bit of a favor here. You don't make him fight someone outside the rankings. Hooker's going to be ready for International Fight Week. I don't think Fiziev will be. I'm going to be brutally honest. So I think you wait a little bit. See the next time you go to Perth. Fiziev versus Hooker, 5-round main event on the fight night that they do in Perth. And when are they going to do it? I want to say it's going to be like in August, a September, something like that. If you do Fiziev versus Hooker, 5-round main event, or you do a co-main event, it's going to be a great fight. Put it on a fight night card. Put it on a pay-per-view. If it's on a pay-per-view, you can put this as a feature fight. You can put this as a co-main. If it's as a fight night, you're probably going to make this the main event. Fiziev versus Hooker. Do Fiziev a solid. He stepped up to take another tough fight against Justin Gaethje. Yes, it was a great opportunity, but he took it on short notice. He went out there and he put up a great fight. Do him a solid. And Hooker had such a close fight with Gamrot. Some people think Gamrot won. I picked Hooker, so of course I'm going to say Hooker won, but maybe he's got to defend his ranking spot after not being able to fight Gaethje. And again, he hurt his hand. It's not a fault of his own. But, like, this is a good fight for Dan Hooker. It's fun. It's going to be taking place on the feet, which is where he wants to be. And you give him a chance to put him in front of an Australian crowd, I think it's going to make more sense for him. So, Fiziev Hooker, main event of the Perth Fight Night card that they end up doing. Moving on. Ignacio Bahamondes, great submission win over Jalen Turner. I think he gets the Dariush fight. Now, hear me out. We'll get to Rufi in a second. Rufi's the one that called out Beneil Dariush. I think it's hard to get Dariush to take that fight because Dariush wants to fight someone in the rankings. Rufi's not just going to jump into the rankings with a wheel kick KO over Bobby Green, even though he could. But Bobby Green's not the opponent that's going to get you into the rankings anymore. Jalen Turner, who was in the rankings, is the opponent that's going to get you there. Dariush wants to fight someone in the rankings that's going to get him as close to the title as possible. When I look at the matchups, he's not going to get Moicano again. Even if he does, I don't see the Moicano fight happening again. It is an option. But I don't think he's going to get a jump up at Max Holloway. He's not going to get a jump up at any of these. He's not going to get the Hooker fight. He's not going to get he already got knocked out by Sarukian. He got knocked out by Charles. He's not getting the Gaethje fight. Like, he's not going to be fighting up, is what I'm trying to say here. It's going to be one of those guys down below, and I think Bahamondes is going to be ranked like 13 at the end of this. Dariush is ranked 9, I think. 9 versus 13 makes a lot of sense. You put this as the main card opener of International Fight Week, I think it's a sick fight. Ignacio Bahamondes, Beneil Dariush, main card of a pay-per-view. Honestly, Bahamondes can turn around very quickly. I can see him being able to turn around and go on the 316 card in Newark, New Jersey. You might want to take a little bit more time on that. Maybe he fights in, I think they're going to do 2 cards in June. Maybe he does the pay-per-view in July. Maybe he fights in July, but I think this is a main card opener type fight. Beneil Dariush, maybe not an International Fight Week, because I'm expecting International Fight Week to be beyond stacked. This can be a prelim headliner, but I think you do Bahamondes versus Beneil Dariush, main card opener, UFC 318 in July. I think it's a great fight to make. 9 versus 13, it makes sense. Bahamondes keeps going up in the rankings. Dariush is going to keep trying to defend his spot in the rankings. So, and if Dariush gets a win, he beats a Bahamondes that has a ton of hype behind him, and then he gets to start, going up a little bit more in the rankings, getting closer to the title, especially coming off a bunch of losses in a row. And the UFC did take care of him. They gave him his show and his win money, so it's not like he's getting totally shafted here. And we're not giving him Rufi. It's okay. Mauricio Rufi, speaking of, now he has the McGregor trajectory of round 1 KO, decision, round 1 KO. After McGregor got his round 1 KO over a guy just outside the top 15 rankings, he got the jump up against Dustin Poirier. We're not going to put Rufi against Poirier. We're not going to do that to our boy DP. But I think he should get a big name in the rankings that a lot of people know that'll get him a good spot in the rankings. Maybe top 10, it's going to be top 15 for sure. A guy that's fighting at UFC 312 is Michael Chandler. I think Chandler's going to lose to Patty. Even if Chandler doesn't lose to Patty, he's already fought everyone in the fucking top 5. We're not doing these rematches and title elimination bouts only for fucking Michael Chandler. We're not doing those. He's 38. He's a fun fighter. And I think he is going to lose to Patty. And this is a lot better for him if he loses to Patty. The reason why is you can get him to buy into it. All right, I'm going to have to defend my ranking spot a little bit more again. At least I'm going to do it against an entertaining guy. Chandler's the type of guy that wants a big name fight. A big name fight is against Mauricio Rufi. You do this fight, Madison Square Garden. And again, I'd like to see Mauricio Rufi be more active, but I just think Chandler's going to lose to Patty. And he may not take a ton of damage, but I think he is going to lose maybe by submission in this fight. Maybe. We'll see, but I think Mauricio Rufi versus Michael Chandler makes a ton of sense. Maybe you do it in International Fight Week. Chandler doesn't take a ton of damage. International Fight Week, that's the main card opener. Mauricio Rufi versus Michael Chandler. Think that's a sick fight. Granted, it only gives Chandler about 2.5 months, but if he doesn't take a ton of damage against Patty, he just gets submitted. I can see him wanting to turn around and take a fight quick. Mauricio Rufi should be turning around and taking a fight quickly. I think Rufi versus Chandler is a great fight. Even if you wait until August, September to do it. Give Mauricio Rufi more time to continue to get better and better and better. This guy's young. He's got a ton of hype behind him. He had a sick knockout and took no damage, yes, but honestly, you don't need to rush him like crazy. I would like to see him remain active. Fight before November. That's fine. I think Michael Chandler's the fight to make. It's the big name, like Poirier is a big name. When McGregor was fighting him, Poirier was a name in the rankings. Michael Chandler is a name in the rankings that Mauricio Rufi can go out there and fight, and it would be an absolute fucking war. Sells a ton of pay-per-views. It's a feature fight on a pay-per-view. Maybe on like the Dricus Hamzat one they end up doing. If they end up doing like 319 in August, I think that's a sick one to do. Mauricio Rufy, Michael Chandler's the fight to make, guys. Feature fight on a pay-per-view, it's perfect. Moving on, Bobby Green. I mean, tell me this isn't going to happen. Win or lose to Jim Miller, Chase Hooper's going to end up getting Bobby Green next. Bobby Green's going to need some time off. Chase Hooper likes to take usually around 4 to 6 months, which is good. It's good timing. Bobby Green's going to need some time off. This gives, we're looking at Chase Hooper having pretty much a month and a week or so, like 5 weeks after Bobby Green's fight. Chase Hooper's going to be fighting Jim Miller. I do think Chase Hooper's going to take some damage. Probably picking Chase Hooper to win, but I do think he's going to take some damage. Jim Miller does put some beatings on his opponents. Even if he loses, he hurt Bobby Green a couple times. Bobby does like to remain active. But I think Bobby Green versus Chase Hooper is just going to be the fight that ends up getting made. I'd like to see Bobby wait till Madison Square Garden. You can do this the prelim headliner, Bobby Green, Chase Hooper. It makes some sense to me. Moving on, Joshua Van. Animal, bro. Love watching this guy fight. I think he's got to fight up in the rankings. Listen, he should be ranked 15. There's a couple of fights for him. He had the Bruno Silva fight booked. You could take the Bruno Silva fight again. And I bet he's willing to turn around and fight quick. He didn't take much damage against Ray Saruya, and this guy's super active. But I think a guy that just lost in the rankings, he's ranked number 8, Asu Almabayev. Dude, I think Asu Almabayev versus Joshua Van is going to be a sick fight. I'm expecting Joshua Van to be ranked like 14. I actually consider the Kai Asakura fight. I don't hate a Kai Asakura fight as well. I just think they're going to do something different with Kai Asakura. I think Joshua Van versus Asu Almabayev is a great fight to make. Co-main event of a UFC Fight Night card. Feature fight of a UFC Fight Night card. I think this is a sick fight. Joshua Van, Asu Almabayev. Asu Almabayev, great takedowns. But we saw Joshua Van able to defend takedowns from Ray Saruya, who has different kinds of great takedowns. Arm throws, can get into the judo game. I think this is a great fight, and it's a real test for Joshua Van. Say, hey, how long can you go? Can you stuff takedowns from some of the elite? And then can you put a beating on the feet? So, I mean, dude, I'm a fucking absolute rapper. Joshua Van, Asu Almabayev makes a lot of sense to me. I think you book this fight sometime in July. Honestly, dude, this is a great fucking fight for the prelims of International Fight Week. That's where I'd like to see this. International Fight Week, Joshua Van versus Asu Almabayev. 7th fight in the card. It's the co-headliner of the prelims. Sick fight. Let's make that one happen. That's a great time for it, International Fight Week. Ray Saruya lost. I think a Clayton Carpenter matchup's pretty good. Granted, I think that Ray Saruya should take maybe some time. If they go to Japan, go fight in Japan, like when they go to the Japan card. If they go to Japan, fight on the Japan card. But I think Clayton Carpenter might get a fight in and then have a win and then be like, all right, dude, then you book Ray Saruya versus Clayton Carpenter. I think it's an interesting matchup. Clayton Carpenter can wrestle. Saruya can wrestle. We'll see if they negate each other and it ends up on the feet. And Saruya does need some more time to work on his hands, but I just think this is a good fight to make. Bruno Ferreira. Shara Magomedov. This is perfect. This is perfect. Bruno Ferreira has fought in Abu Dhabi. He's going to be willing to go fight in Abu Dhabi or Saudi. When they go to the Qatar fight card, I think that's where Shara is going to fight next. I think Bruno Ferreira makes sense for him. It's a guy just outside the rankings, but he's coming off a big win. There's some hype. And he's mostly a striker. Like, he's a powerful striker. Yes, he has a submission. Yes, he shot some takedowns on Petrosian. But I expect Shara to be a little bit better in the takedown defense department than Petrosian. And I expect him to, I think this is a fight that he'd be willing to take. So Bruno Ferreira, Shara Magomedov makes a ton of sense to me. It's a great fight. When they go to Qatar, book it. I think they'll go to Qatar in July, maybe. Maybe if they go in June, Ferreira will turn around and take this fight quick because it's a Shara fight. He's going to get paid pretty well for it. And he didn't take much damage against Petrosian except for in the nuts. So I think this fight makes sense. Moving on, Carlos Leal, Jake Matthews. 2 welterweights with impressive wins on the corresponding pay-per-views, UFC 312 and UFC 313. I think this makes a lot of sense. Both guys coming off wins. And it's a good boxing fight. Like, these guys are going to predominantly stay on the feet, and they both throw hard. Granted, I think Leal's got more power, but I actually think there's better technique on the side of Jake Matthews, and he has a chance to win this fight. And if he wins this fight, then he can start looking at those rankings, honestly, because he's coming off a couple wins in a row against decent opponents. And then he's got Carlos Leal. If he gets a win over Jake Matthews here, if he gets a finish, that's insane for him too. So I think Leal and Jake Matthews make sense. Perth card, sick fight for me. Main card of a fight night in Perth. If you do Fiziev versus Hooker as the main event, you can put this as the main card opener. Jake Matthews versus Carlos Leal. I think it makes sense. Myron Santos got a robbery victory, in my opinion. It's only makes sense to put him against the absolute prospect derailer, Christian Rodriguez. He's fighting on the Mexico card. They're going to be on similar schedules. I expect Christian Rodriguez to get a win on the UFC Mexico card against, don't remember who he's fighting, but I don't think it was the most talented prospect. So I think Myron Santos versus Christian Rodriguez makes a ton of sense to me. Moving on, Francis Marshall, who I thought got the win against Myron Santos. Let's give him Danny Silva. Danny Silva coming off a win last week. I thought Francis Marshall got a win. So these are the fight night matchups. Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.